with counter spells, Scred, Lightning Bolt, and then different fairies like Spell Setter Sprite to counter magic. On the other side, we have the Defender's deck, which is going to use various creatures, walls, and creatures with the Defender type, as well as creatures that make mana for each Defender you have in play, and a couple different untap effects in order to make infinite mana with Galvanic Alchemist once they have at least 4 Defenders in play. And they have a couple different tap effects in order to fill the board. Open interaction here you can see in the Defender's hand is with Stony Brook Schoolmaster. Whenever it's tapped, you get a Morphle token. You combine that with the Loam Dryad in their hand or the Cerulean Caretaker they have in play, and every time they tap them for mana, they'll be able to start going wide on their board with tokens. It's notable here that because of the nature of the Defender's deck, they're able to come up the board only on the ground. So if the Fairies player can give enough board presence in the air, they'll be able to pressure the Defender's player before they're able to get their combo going. It's also very important that the blue-red Scred player prioritizes their counterspells a lot because they're not really going to be under a lot of pressure from the Defender's player. So as long as they can manage to prioritize counter magic, this should be a fairly easy matchup, as long as they don't have a lot of bad draws. But looking at their hand right now, that doesn't seem to be the case. Having a little bit of technical difficulties here, getting Itakoru's stream back. There we go. Epicure Blood here being one of the possible win conditions for their deck. They're able to assemble some Soul Sister type effects, which gain them life every time a creature enters play. Epicure Blood then gains them life. This would be a misconception on my part, as I originally notated this as the Defender's deck, but between Epicure Blood and Stony Brook Schoolmaster, they're actually more of a Abzan Soul Sisters deck that runs very few lands. Scud player, once again, trying to be as thorough as they can with paying attention to threats on board. Soul Sisters playing out their Selfless Cathar, which is a one-shot anthem effect that'll allow them to provide more burst damage in play. Stony Brook here, forcing them to use a counter spell. Imagine we'll see all 3 Loam Dryads serve in as a pseudo shock to the Scred player. Got a few bugs that are paying me too much attention. The Stampede here going to be a potentially great draw. Due to the low count of this deck, Lead the Stampede tends to be a very large burst draw effect for this deck, in addition to a Whiny Way. We finally see a Soul Sister effect for the namesake of the deck. Looks like our blue-red Scred player is definitely on the back foot here. He's going to need to establish some sort of board presence in order to stave off this onslaught of 1-2s. It's worth noting here that unless he's able to draw into a cantrip, the Soul Sisters player will be able to run out this Evercure of Blood to effectively end this match. Here we see the Epicure coming down. Let's see if we can pull a cantrip. And there's the Deprive. Tremendous pickup for the Scred player. This allowing them to still be in the game. Fairies here, a decent enough pickup, allowing him to start adding some fairies to the board. accumulated knowledge here. Let him refill on his hand. Unfortunately, only drawing one fairy seer means this game is over. Now we go to sideboarding. So our Solstice player electing to board in a couple Scattershot Archers in order to deal with the fairies in the hand. And some Crimson Acolytes, which have protection from red and allow them to give various creatures additional protection. A couple things to give some additional toughness, and then Field Surgeons, which allow them to tap creatures in order to prevent damage. Oh, it looks like we're foregoing the extra copies of Field Surgeon. Blue-red Scred player bringing in a couple more pieces of interaction to handle the creatures in play in the form of Swirling Sandstorm, one of the few board wipes that are actually in Pauper, and boarding out a couple of the worse interaction pieces like Echoing Truth and Dispel being nearly a dead card in this matchup. Ninja Thief Powers, after initial hit, will most likely not connect again, so seems like a pretty safe card to board out. Looks like our Soul Sisters player has clicked submit, and just waiting on our blue-red Scred player to do some final board outs to get things rolling. There we go. Get that fixed. And we're off for game 2. Soul Sisters player, pretty light on lands, not atypical for their deck, and deploying out a couple of their mana creatures. Scred player considering countering it, decides to go through with it. This will notably slow down the Soul Sisters player a fair amount due to their constraint of mana. Electricity, a pretty phenomenal draw here. Will allow them to actually clear their entire board at will. Surely Caretaker might just eat the lightning bolt here in order to get it off the table. Nope, let's see, hold on to it. Ceramic Sandstorm, great pickup. I think we're going to see him attack with both and then deploy the Ninja of the Deep Hours off the Spell Stutter Sprite. Nope, just going to hold it back. There's a Winding Way. And we'll see what he's able to pick up. Opposite name creature. Picking up 3 different creatures. Now having access to 2 mana again, I imagine we'll see him deploy Lone Dryad. Possibly Scattershot Archer. Yep, there's the Scattershot Archer. And that will most certainly beat a Lightning Bolt. Due to the detrimental nature of that card to the blue-red Scred deck. I think the play that best suits the board at hand for the Scred player is to deploy Electrickery, put it on top of the library, and then draw an additional card, utilizing Ninja of the Deep Hours. No? Opting to return Fairies here in order to get this Scry 2. If this was the case, I think it would have been better to hold off on the Mystic Sanctuary, but Accumulated Knowledge plus Brainstorm. Sorry, he's going to cantrip it. Worth noting that Swelling Sandstorm doesn't actually have text until he's able to get Threshold, which he's only 3 cards deep right now. So he's going to have to start getting some spells in there, although he's in no rush to get them right now. It would be better to wait till the opponent's board's been committed to a little more. There we go. Got another Lightning Bolt taking care of the Caretaker. which is going to allow for the ninja to get in and pressure the life total, as well as drawing an additional card. Things are looking rather grim for the Soul Sisters deck. See, lead the Stampede here. Hoping to refill and get a little bit more gas after all these electricities, but still is unaware of the swirling sandstorm that's waiting in the wings. Let's try to get the Soul Sister's hand back. There we go. Well, looks like it's going to have to go to game 3. Unfortunate for the Soul Sisters player, but very well done by the Scred player, is that he never had to reveal the Swirling Sandstorm, so the Soul Sisters player may be unaware that it's coming. However, because of the trickeries and Screds and Bolts, they're most likely going to be incentivized to bring in the further copies of the Field Surgeons, which would still potentially stem the bleeding from the Swirling Sandstorms. The Crimson Acolytes are another thing that are typically able to stem that bleeding, and if they're able to draw them and resolve them, it'll make a pretty big difference. And here we go for game 3. At first glance, it looks like it's a decent hand for the Soul Sisters player. Unfortunately, because he's short on another castable creature, unless he draws a 1 or 2 drop green creature, he's going to be in a tough spot. That was a phenomenal draw, allowing him to start deploying creatures to the board. It's worth noting here that because he doesn't have an untapped red source, he's going to be unable to deal with the creatures in play, and the Field Surgeons are actually going to play a pretty vital role in protecting all of his creatures from various damage sources, with the exception of Swirling Sandstorm because of the massive amount of damage that it deals. The other Veteran Armorsmith is also a fairly huge deal here. Even further increasing that stat line difference. These combination of creatures, the second Armorsmith draw, might just put this game out of reach, even with that Swirling Sandstorm, because it's going to take him a while to get to Threshold. And all of his creatures already have at least 3 toughness. I mean, he can protect the ones that matter, and the rest of them are just unnecessary at that point. Now, while Lead the Stampede is an important draw, it's also worth noting that he can't overcommit to any one effect like this, because he runs the risk of being blown out by a single removal spell. Now, that being said, due to the Aquarian Rangers, he's now able to return force to his hand to get an extra untap, and he can use said force to deploy another Lone Dryad or Veteran Armorsmith at this point. which I imagine we'll see the Veteran Armor Smith right now. Yeah, 3rd Veteran Armor Smith. All his creatures having at least 4 toughness means that even a Scred is not going to be enough. And misclick right there, not taking the mountain. And it's going to be a real disaster. Oof, Augur Bolus missing on 3 different cards, non-instants or sorceries. Put them all on the bottom. Now I think we'll start seeing him deploy some of his other creatures, because the bigger his board gets, the better the healer gets. And Scattershot Archer number 1. See a Tragic Lesson here. Most likely going to discard this island, play Evolving Wilds. So give him 5 cards in the graveyard, almost enough. The Ash Barons being a pretty great draw for the Scred player in that he'd be able to play Mountain, place Rolling Sand, and also hold up Scred, so whatever he ends up protecting, he can then bolt. See him prioritize the healer here, which will in turn most likely, so that's for a total of 6 damage. That prevents 1 of it, and it currently has 4 toughness, so at minimum you need to prevent 3 damage. That's 2, prevent at least 1 more. Now this is not quite a blowout, as long as the Soul Scissors player plays around it, ideally prioritizing the Armor Smiths here. He could tap each Caretaker, giving each of them 1 of it, but there's not much he can do here. The main issue being is that because they will in turn die, he's going to be punished for this. So see what will happen is he's going to do the untap, try to prevent a 3rd damage here, and what's going to happen is it's still going to wipe the board, because once the buffs go away, they're still going to have the same amount of damage marked on them with reduced toughness, wiping the entire board. Fortunately for the Soul Sisters player is the Delver player doesn't really have much to follow up that with, so now he can start deploying stuff. Unfortunately, he is rather devoid of his green creatures at the moment, left with only white creatures in hand. Brainstorm a phenomenal draw for the Delver player, allowing him to put back some of these lands and things, and then shovel them away with the Augur Bolus, so to speak.
I'm learning how to code right now, so I can do this on my site, put a history.
So it's between Scred and Counterspell. Although it's going to take a while for him to deal enough damage, that might just be the nail in the coffin here. That Swirling Sandstorm was a major beating for the opponent, and now he's just struggling to get anything going at this point. And that's it for that. Let's see if we have another match for you. Everyone else is finished.
Or I fetched for a mountain, but I accidentally clicked on an island.
That's
Yeah,
easy,
but
Peter. That was good.
yeah, you didn't get
man.
punished for
Did
it.
not
so.
know sandstorm was a thing.
Oh yeah, I'm running 2 of my sideboard.
Oh, nice, nice.
He actually had both in the previous game and never needed to cast them.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Whew, man, I like. You know what? I used to play with that deck a lot. And it was pretty interesting, especially with the what's that vampire? The 4/4.
Yeah, yeah. I just got
Epic
lucky.
Hero
I guess.
Blood.
Yeah.
So the buy doesn't give you any credit. It's still 1-1. The system sucks. It's rigged. All right.
100% rigged.
100. Wait, is Jeff in Pauper?
No, it still gives you points, I think, as if you won.
Yeah, it gives you the points. It just in your score. It just doesn't show it in the win-loss tie.
Okay. I still think it's rigged. Jeff almost won. Rigged. I'll figure out the pair.
Cool, thanks.
Interesting enough, Matt only played one round and then dropped, but he had a buy one